Hi and welcome to our fourth episode with the amazing Tony Brown and his Out There Deep Dive Life Journey. The three episodes that we've just transitioned through were very emotional for me. It touched me in so many ways. The bravery, the depth, and everything that came with that growth, Tony, was just phenomenal in how you hear your sanity and everything else. Let's see if I can make it through this episode without shedding any tears. Let's see if I could do that. Now, let's touch into some of our last episode, which was, of course, drugs and alcohol with your mum and dad. In a sense, not physically, but emotionally. We looked at the emotional stamina was maturing. Your severe adaptability to adapt, was finding shape. And of course, the increase of intensity, which is pain is love. Really went through that in the last episode. But I want to start this episode is, why do I always fall in love with my mom or dad? Now, this is a big one because we all, they do say you fall in love with your mom or dads in life, but you think, why on earth would you want to fall in love with a mom and dad that had no human space for you? No human space. But yet, when we think about, the relationships and there was a lot of broken relationships because of the repeated mirror that you went through within your childhood. And there were some long-term ones there, and I just want to touch into some of these if we can. I'm being delicate, because, I can't imagine that you were easy to live with either.
Absolutely.
You were on this self-destruct button. But before we go into, the sides as such, and I don't mean it is siding, I'm not there, but how hard do you think you were to live with? Just give me some thoughts on that.
Yeah. Very hard, depending on the type of person that you are. For instance, I've changed quite a bit over the years, but certainly my initial issues were around insecurity, and obviously now joining the dots, it's quite clear where that came from. Mm-hmm. It's to do with instability. It's to do with being comfortable in mayhem and uncomfortable in something that's calm and normal. And so, in a way, I was always looking for something that was dysfunctional, something that replicated what I'd grown up with, and that felt natural to me.
In your 12-year marriage, you were married for 12 years and there was a son in your marriage. And what you said there really says a lot about the dysfunction where you're looking for an underlying undercurrent of dysfunction, otherwise it can't be love, because remember, love is pain.
Yeah.
So that in a sense, you think about that accountability for yourself, which is going into a relationship where someone was already injured and you were adding to that injury because of your past, and they were adding to your injury because of their past. What do you that cycle, did it become an addiction?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
I was wired to do that, and if it didn't feel dysfunctional, kind of crazy, and wrong, then I didn't feel right. Where I'd had things that were calm, pleasant, I screwed it up because I didn't feel comfortable with it.
So there was always that inner sabotage going on.
Yes.
And do you feel in that 12-year marriage that was going both ways for yourself and wife?
Yes.
So they both were sabotaging the opportunity to have any kind of realistic normality of love.
Yes.
I mean, how many? I'm gonna jump ahead myself and come back, because I want to come back to this part of your life, which is How many times do you feel you actually never fell in love, but were in a relationship?
Too many.
And let's just think about that. So you're going into a relationship, actually going in, looking not to be in love, but look like you're in love.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how it is, because I didn't know what love looked like or what it was.
But then if you look at mum and dad, they would have looked like from the outside they may be in love, but actually were not. Because dad's a very proud person. So dad wouldn't have, I guess, promoted the fact that he wouldn't have been in a happy home because of his pride.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when we look at all those dysfunctional relationships, which means that you're now you're in this 3D process where you now live in the marriage of the husband and wife that you grew up with. And that cycle now is in this 12-year marriage that you're in.
Yeah.
Now you think about the karmic return of this, because effectively, let's not talk about your wife's return of karma, let's talk about yours. And it's important we touch on this because, it's really important to understand our accountability in things in life. And, and we've spoke off camera and things, and we've had so many deep dives off camera. It's been beautiful. The realization is that you were also in some sort of abusing state yourself, because you're repeating the abuse that you experienced, albeit in a camouflaged way, we could say, but you are bringing into the marriage the range of your abusive past. Do you feel that was a cycle?
Absolutely. I think that if you don't heal what it is that has damaged you previously, you're just going to keep repeating that. You're going to take that into the next relationship, and so on and so on. But one, it's recognizing it, and then secondly, it's doing something about it.
Yeah. Because I want to go into, there was a pivot point in the marriage where there was a row, and then you went to a wine bar, and foolishly we could say, got drunk, drove home, smashed the car, woke up in hospital. This was your first, I'm going to say, dodge of death. I mean, how you got away with that, we never know, but that was really the breaking up of that relationship. And also you touched on, your shortfallings as a dad yourself, where your experience, of course, was adoption, rejection, adoption. Then you had the Dutch parents, then you're back with your blood parents, and then suddenly you're a dad. You've not gone to university to learn how to be a dad. You've experienced the worst of dads. How do you think that outplayed for yourself as a father?
I think in several ways. I mean, one, I was desperate from the beginning not to repeat what I'd been through as a child. And so I think how that played out is that no matter how difficult and dysfunctional the marriage was, I felt I had to stay for the sake of my son.
Wow.
And also that I could not leave him, because that would be so guilt-inducing. However, when it came to it, I could not stay. And this is where the karmic thing that you spoke about comes in. Because I was still just going on and on and on and on, something happened to break that and ensure that it couldn't continue any longer.
Well, effectively, we were living in a car crash, so you created a car crash.
Brilliantly put.
I mean, that's... But then we think about, your parenting yourself. One, you were overdoing your parenting, I have no doubt. Overdoing being a dad to try and compensate for what you didn't experience as a son yourself. But also, do you feel that it could, by hanging on the way you did, that it actually created a disjointed environment, a disjointed home for your son?
Yes, undoubtedly. I'm not sure quite how I could have handled things differently. If I'd gone earlier, maybe it would have been more difficult, or it could have been less difficult. I'll never know that.
Yeah.
But at the time, I just felt, this is what I have to do. I have to try and stay and make the best of it. But, you know, as you say, you can do that for so long, and then something, consciously or unconsciously, will intervene to bring that to a halt.
How close do you think you were to dodging death in that car crash?
Very close indeed. And this was the second one after the ice cream van. Yeah, this one was bad. After an argument, I got in the car, drove to a wine bar, and drank, I don't know how much. Got in the car and drove home. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen the film The Wolf of Wall Street. Is that what it's called?
I'm not sure.
Right, it's called something like that. Anyway, the guy goes out and he gets completely wasted, and he thinks that he's okay, but then he sort of comes round the next day, he sees his beautiful sports car is mangled, and he realises that the night before he'd been out of it.
Yeah.
This was something not dissimilar from that.
Really?
I remember starting the car. I don't remember driving home. What I do remember is then just waking up in hospital, wondering what the hell had happened.
Wow. What, I mean, so there's drink driving. Did you lose your license?
I did, yes.
And where did you go with your career then?
Well, I tried to go to work every day by public transport, and that was difficult. And I tried to hold everything together. That was also very hard because I'd left home now.
Yeah.
And it was trying to keep a relationship with my son going. It was trying to keep the job going. And I found things increasingly difficult.
Wow. Did you ever have thoughts of, let me go back to the drugs and alcohol? You know, was it you know, a real effort for you to keep yourself clean, let's say, and, you know, thinking positively, moving forward? Because, you know, what I'm seeing is that you're now moving into a life where your relationships are like a game of snakes and ladders. And, you know, I'm seeing that from our preparation for this whole documentary is that you just dropped in of one and dropped out of another. And the pattern, the 3D pattern, is surreal. But I would like to say, as much as we've spoke about the disappointments of the people that you went in, of the relationships you went in with, there's also a clear indication here of your intention, your subconscious intention, which is it has to be messy.
There is that, yes. And I think your description of it being snakes and ladders is perfectly accurate. If I think about what happened that night with the car, I live down the bottom of the hill. So I approached the house from the top of the hill, and I was bouncing the car off cars on either side until it rolled over down the rest of the hill. Yeah. Pretty much like snakes and ladders.
That's just surreal. That's just surreal. And, you know, we're looking at probably a further, I don't know, maybe 6 failed relationships after the car extravaganza.
Yeah.
You know, if I was to measure that against my life, I've had maybe 4 relationships in my whole life of any kind of length. I mean, or where it's been from 6 months to 20 years. I mean, for yourself, there's this pattern of hurt, of trying, but also sabotaging. You know, let's think about, you know, at what point does this sort of put itself to bed when we say, okay, I'm not going to keep reliving? Because let's go into, you know, from there, these failed relationships have now taken you back into a deep depressive state again. From one failure to another, each time you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. And I've started our next portion of this documentary, and I've named it Electricity, Energy, and Energy Out. energy in, energy out. Let's touch on this because this is just off the wall. So you lost all your assets.
Yes, then came the divorce, and this lady judge lowered her glasses and said, I'm giving 90% to your soon-to-be ex-wife, and my son was 8 at the time, and you'll pay your son's school fees for the next 10 years until he's 18.
Wow.
And I said, well, how am I supposed to do that? Where am I supposed to live?
Yeah.
And she said, if you don't shut up, Mr. Brown, I'll have you taken down. Now, at this point, one court officer grabbed one arm, the other one grabbed the other, and my solicitor just went, let it go.
Wow.
Let it all go, otherwise she will do what she's threatened.
And then you're flatlined in life.
Yeah.
Because we have is that, you visited your local GP, chronic depression again, so the past has crept right back in, and then the advisory was trauma in to remove trauma, which is what we have here is, electric shock therapy.
Yeah.
And by the way, you had to pay for this.
Yes.
So you're paying for the hurt now, which you think about that, paying for the hurt. So I don't quite get this because I've never heard of it. It's not something that I've had conversations about in my 56 years. Just tell me what this is. Electric shock therapy.
Right. There's quite a famous film called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
I know the film.
With Jack Nicholson playing the lead character. Now, in this film, he leads a rebellion of the inmates of a mental hospital. And because they want to crush him and crush the rebellion, they give him electroconvulsive therapy.
Okay.
What this involves is putting electrodes either side of the head and passing an electric shock through the brain.
Wow.
To do this, you're lying flat and they have to put something around your tongue to make sure you don't swallow your tongue. And they strap you down because you're going to be shaking all over. This is what they gave me to supposedly reduce my chronic depression.
But you wasn't broken there, you were broken there.
Yes.
You were broken there.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense.
This is a really old way of dealing with supposed mental issues. It's a bit like in what they used to use in the asylums, and a bit almost as barbaric on one level as the lobotomies that they used to give people.
Wow. And you're still on antidepressants, yeah?
Yes.
How many years, I'm just going to throw this in, how many years at this given point had you been on antidepressants?
At that point, probably about 35 years.
And are these antidepressants, I'm guessing, are they like irregular, heavy dose? What kind, are these big antidepressants,
Every time a new antidepressant came out, I would be given it. And that ranged from things that they had in play over 30 years ago to the more modern SSRIs, which is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are supposed to really help people. Things like fluoxetine, Prozac, diazepam, all these sort of benzos and things were thrown at me, and take these, and you need them for the rest of your life. And now you can have some electric shock treatment as well.
How are you functioning? It's just, I find it so hard to comprehend how someone can take that amount of antidepressants for that amount of time and have the emotional intelligence you have right now in life. Because you have a very high level of emotional intelligence, awareness, intuitiveness. How did that not get flatlined with the synthetic, drugs, with the synthetic emotions that were put in through tablet form? I'm in awe of how it is you still think the way you think. And it is very generously, emotionally built as a person you are.
I think certainly they did flatline me because I think that it took away a lot of, how can I put it, normal emotion. So rather than being, reacting in a certain way, I was just flat.
Yeah.
And because I've been on them so long, I never knew what my normal level was.
Wow. So you've never experienced like natural happiness,
No.
even natural sadness.
I didn't know what it was because from the age of 15, and now I'm 50 odd at this point, I had no idea what I was like without those drugs.
Have you ever experienced really belly laughing and feeling hyper when you woke up and things? Without drugs?
That's the question.
It's just...
I think probably more so certainly now. I mean, sometimes now I'm quite flat, and I don't know if... I think that's probably just the way I am. But then am I like this because I've had 45 odd years of training to be like this, flat, or is that what I'm really like? I'm starting now, I think, to understand what is me and what the effect of those drugs might have been.
Yeah.
And so now I'm, sort of learning to be a child again in many ways.
Wow. That's such a profound thing. And, listen, I get flat days. I consider myself sort of high energy, but I get flat days. And Deb says, when I dip massively. But she gets that. And I think, when you are a high thinker like the way you are, you're an entrepreneur, you drive, you push life hard, then we've got to have dips. But I don't see them as dip days. I see them as days when my emotional body is saying, stop, recharge, because you've emptied yourself again. We do those things, but yeah, your endurance is because, here's the thing, going through all that shock therapy and again, intensely on the medication, and we are 6 years past the divorce, and I've got you 6 years and still haven't learned. In the sense of, you're 49 years old, you moved throughout England, followed several job contracts, housing management, directors' roles and things like this, and it's like, yeah, you're still got your snakes and ladders relationships. It's up and slide down, it's climb up, slide back down, because I'm seeing you, is that what I'm also seeing is your 3D formula is starting to build here now. And I've got you to discuss this, Paul. I've got it in my notes to discuss this. But I want to come back and, when you're going from relationship to relationship, I want to talk about the start. So you meet someone, do you fall in love, or do you meet someone and say, okay, I can make a mess of this? Now, please think, and now, the answer is going to be, no, Paul, I didn't. But when you were bouncing at the rate that you were bouncing, and they weren't all, these are not one-night stands, these are committed relationships. At what point, it's like, okay, it's time to sabotage this. I just want to try and get an understanding of that for our audience and things. It's a techie question.
Right. Sometimes it was because it felt comfortable and,
being saved,
normal, or whatever, and that to me felt uncomfortable. Other times they were just things that were never going to work, with hindsight, going into something and looking back after, there was no way. What was I thinking? Okay, I wasn't thinking. That's why that happened. And I think it's increasing awareness of the pattern. It's increasing awareness of, I'm doing this again. I'm doing this again. Why am I doing this? Now, it's a slow drip, drip, drip realization that it's the repetition of an unhealthy pattern that doesn't do me any good, doesn't do them any good.
And do you see, again, I want to take them out of the decision making. I mean, effectively, it's a selfishness, a negative selfishness, because you're pulling someone into a life that is mirroring your childhood or the husband and wife that you lived with, not to the severity that you experienced as a childhood, but that disembowelment of togetherness, if that makes sense. Okay, it's like,
I think there's another important point there, which is that in most of those, I was not doing the choosing. I was being led or attracted. Running after people is not my thing. I'm an introvert and too shy, don't do that. And so it was more or less being enticed or whatever. Okay, let's go, and I'll follow.
Wow, so you always you always went in a relationship with a carer.
Probably that was it.
So effectively, if someone had lived a life where they kept repeating the need to care for someone, look after someone, sort out their mess, you were that person.
In some instances, yes, they're looking for a mess. Here I am. Come and fix me. No, you weren't quite banking on that, were you?
I want to come into, there was then a relationship, there was a 6-year relationship. And Christmas Day, you found out that in that relationship, your partner was unfaithful. She left you on Christmas Day.
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve, sorry, yes. And I go, I'm around about 49 now, if I'm correct. I'm somewhere around there.
This would have been 2011, Christmas 2011.
Because here you are, suddenly, now let's be clear that, also there's a huge deterioration in your finances.
Yes.
You are at rock bottom, there's no contracts, you've tried everything, there's no money, poverty is creeping in at this point, your partner leaves you on Christmas Eve, and now it's what?
I'm sick of this shit. I'm checking out.
Because here's the second time. Here's when so tell me about this experience, because this is a big landmark for us. Because I've got wine, I've got pills, I've got you wake up in hospital.
Yeah. I mean, if we think about Christmas anyway, it's a time when there's lots of false jollity, sometimes forced jollity. Sometimes it's real, but it's a time when a lot of people are having fun.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in this house with a pile of repossession notices and disconnection notices, and I could hear sort of Christmas music playing through the walls of next door. They're having some family party or something, and the person I'm with is standing at the door with a bag saying, "I'm off."
Wow.
Now, due to the factors that you've just mentioned, no contracts, no work for several years, everything's dried up. And she's gone, there's no food in the fridge, nothing, and it's Christmas Eve. What am I going to do now? I thought, I've got nothing here, I've got no money, there's no one I can call, that's it. So I thought, I'm checking out. I've had enough.
Wow.
I can't see any options. I can't see any point in carrying on. I seem to keep messing up life. No matter how much I keep going round in circles, I keep ending up with the same old shit.
Wow. And we could call this a pity party if we wanted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we
That's
could
what it was.
say that. But then also let's take in account, as life accountants we are here today, we're accounting sums of life. You had no bank of goodness to actually pull in, because go back from the age of 6 onwards, there were a few great summer holidays, but there was no life currency you had banked up that you could pull on to and say, okay, let me grab that to make myself happy. There was nothing there. So, taking that option where you're looking to exit out, it's understandable. I mean, not everybody has that ability, because it takes courage to take your life. It does. It takes courage to do that. And please, for all those, moms and dads out there that have lost children, have lost people through suicide, I don't mean to disrespect it or encourage it or say it's a great thing. I'm not. But emotionally, it takes something to come out of life early.
It does. And I think the other thing that people need to be aware of is that it's not always the people who say, I've had enough, I'm going to kill myself, to watch. It's the ones who don't say it. It's the ones who just become withdrawn. They stop picking up the phone, talking to people. They stop going out. They're the ones to watch, because they're not going to tell people they're going to do it. They're just going to do it.
Yeah. And, was it a cry for help? Or was it, I'm out?
This one was definitely, I'm out.
Because you're now sectioned.
Well, what happened then, just to give the detail, is I had no food, no money, no nothing, but I did have a bank of antidepressants, which I'd had stored up over goodness knows how many years, all different types, and about 3 bottles of cheap wine left. And I thought, I'll run a bath, get into the bath with the pills and the wine, and I thought this will be belt and braces. If the pills and the wine don't do it, I should sink underwater and drown. So that's it. So no way out of this. I kept drinking the wine, shoveling mouthfuls of pills in, more wine, more pills, and that was it. As far as I was concerned, I don't know what happened next. I woke up and found myself locked in a mental hospital sectioned under the Mental Health Act.
Wow. That's your second time to cheat death and your second time to be in that place where your life is being controlled now because of your depression. So you're now being sectioned. And what I'm hearing is you were heavily medicated at this time and nothing was really helping you. So at what point, whilst you're in this mental hospital, do you think, okay, I have got to get control of my mind again? I've got to, because I know if I do not, then you're not going to get out of there.
I'm not sure at what point it happened, but they dosed me up with tons and tons of medication in there, and then again said, your depression is so intransigent, we need to give you electroconvulsive therapy.
Oh, wow.
And so again, they gave me 19 courses of electroconvulsive therapy. Now, it didn't...
was it a choice?
No. Not that I would have been in any fit state to make a choice.
Yeah.
So it's just what they thought they would do.
Yeah.
Now, some people have said that it's helped them. A lot of people have said it hasn't helped them, may have made them worse. What it did certainly with me is destroy parts of my short-term memory.
Oh, really?
So now I have gaps still about some of what happened around that period.
Wow. It's pretty brutal when you go through what was supposed to be an opportunity to heal something that's as a cause and effect of quality life that actually takes away then your ability to normally function within your mind. You know, this is a database up there. It's a processor. So obviously chunks of that processor have been damaged. The muscle, the brain. Wow. So moving forward, it's like, oh yeah, freedom is sweet, but I need to keep my home. So now, because I'm looking at when we left the hospital.
Well, if I can just say something about leaving a place. When you're sectioned in a place like that, you can't just go and say, oh, I want to go home now, because they won't allow it. They will say, well, you may still be a danger to yourself or other people, therefore you're not going anywhere. Some people have been in these institutions for an awful long time. Some of them might not even need to be in there and should not be in there. In my case, they would not let me out because I had no responsible adult, as it's called.
How old are you?
What's your age? I'm 54.
Wow.
At this time.
No responsible adult, okay.
And they said, no, you've got no one to go back to keep an eye on you, which was true. And then I saw this old computer in the corner of the ward one day when I'm feeling a bit lucid. And I went on Facebook and I started scrolling through this thing in a half-dazed sense of mind. And I see a name of somebody who I was at school with many, many years previously, who I hadn't seen for maybe 25, 30 years. I just messaged him and said, hi mate, long time no see, hope you're keeping okay. Could you do me a big favour and come and spring me from the mental hospital?
Wow.
And bless him, he and his wife drove all the way down from Warwickshire to Harrow Hospital and said, we're his responsible adults, now let him out.
Really? I get emotional at that. It gets me emotional to think that your only way out was to reach out to someone on Facebook and hope they would come and rescue. It's like a movie.
And I have to say, most people, if you receive a message like that, you know, block, delete.
Yeah, totally.
Mad person.
I got emotional at that because it's like you're in this building of some sort, this hospital. You've got no choice in anything, and you manage, somehow it gets synergized so you can get on a computer, get on Facebook and ask someone to come and rescue you, and they came.
And that's when I understand that many things don't happen by chance. They happen by design and, call it woo-woo, whatever. But of all the hundreds and thousands of people on Facebook, he was the person whose name popped up. And he, bless him and his wife, drove all the way down, whereas most people, they would not have done that.
Time to check out, eh? It was just beautiful. What happened then? What was the next step for you?
They got me out, took me back to my house. Then my GP, had a very good GP at that time, lovely lady. And she wrote to all the people to whom I owed money and said, leave this man alone. He's just trying to take his life.
Yeah.
Don't press him for money. Don't take him to court. Leave him alone. And that bought me some space. Then, during this period, my phone went and it was somebody that I used to work with who rang up and said, oh, I haven't seen you for a long time. How are you doing? I said, oh, all right, thanks. He said, I'm coming to see you. I said, no, you're not. Because my house was a mess. I was a mess. Just come out of mental hospital. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Don't want to see anybody. Anyway, she turned up on my doorstep.
Oh, wow.
And wouldn't go. And now we're married.
An Oma. Yeah. That is just beautiful that, again, those synchronicities of her just coming there. I mean, when was the last time that you saw the lady that you married now before?
Oh, crikey, years.
Man, that's a gamble. She had no, just coming there. I mean, that's pretty profound. And, now you're going in a new direction. What I have here is that, yes, things are on a thread, but also then you attended a property course. You started to develop yourself. Yeah. Now, here is where I see the pivot point. It's not the property, it's not the property course you went on, it's the person that you met.
Yes.
Your manager, is that what you call it?
It was a property coach.
Yeah, let's talk about the property coach and the influence there. Because here's the thing, sometimes it's not about what you're learning, it's about who is there. That influences another level of understanding.
Well, this guy was quite amazing. He was a huge Australian, probably about 6.5 foot tall, massive bear of a man.
Yeah.
A bit like the honey bear. And he was lovely. And the thing is that we had a choice of coaches and somehow got drawn to him. And he picked up on my number blindness very early.
Okay.
He said, you don't like this, do you? I said, no. And so he would send me sums like a teacher every week. What's the rate of return on this property? What's the return on investment on that? And I'd have to do these sums and send them back and he'd mark them.
Oh, wow. That's caring in a way.
It was. But then also he said, look, you need to change your life in the way that you think and so on. And he got me into meditation. And so we went on a meditation course to learn how to do that.
Wow. How was that for you, bearing in mind that you've not been in your own mind all your life? You've been out of your mind.
Yeah.
So how did you find that process of actually listening to you for the first time?
We went to this course in Piccadilly. It was 3 days in a row I had to go to this. It was bizarre. The first time that I came out of that building after having meditated, and this chap, he's written a book actually about it, and he used to run courses, maybe he still does. And we came out of this place, Piccadilly, it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so there was people rushing everywhere, all over the place. And I'm just sort of strolling along thinking, where are these people? Why are they all rushing all over the place? They're all mad. Why don't they just calm down? What's wrong with everybody? It was the most weird experience. Wow. And it really was like watching something in fast motion. Everybody's walking around in fast motion. And I'm just drifting.
That's called in the moment, my friend.
It was weird as goodness knows what. And then after that, I said, okay, I've been on this meditation course. What next? And he said, right, I want you to read these books. And they weren't property books, they were books on metaphysics.
Oh, okay.
And about, how your mind works and stuff like this. Now, this chap was quite out there. He'd been trained by Dr. John DeMartini and various other people, and he could bend spoons with his,
That's
with his
beautiful.
eyes. He's just like Uri Geller. He was really out there. And he said, look, you also need to stop taking these pills. He said, they're going to kill you. And he said, I've got a friend who's a kinesiologist. I want you to take all your pills and go and see him, which I did.
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't know what a kinesiologist is, it's somebody who does something called muscle testing.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is you ask your body a question and your body will respond because your body can't lie.
Did they work with the vials? Because some kinesiologists, or the kinesiologists, they work with their vials also that tell you what you're missing in and things.
He did.
He
did that with minerals and vitamins, and he worked out which ones I was deficient in, as well as doing the, your body doesn't like this at all, stop it. And so he said, right, stop taking all this stuff and don't do this at home, folks, right? So I just stopped taking all the medication. He said, here's some vitamins and minerals to keep you going. Not going to be nice, but this is the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Again, don't do this at home like this.
And now you're coming cold turkey off the antidepressants.
Absolutely. So 2 months.
What was that like?
2 months of shaking and sweating and sort of feeling really pretty damn ill. Wow. And I rang him up and said, I don't know if I can hack this. I need to go back on them. I can't cope. And he said, look, don't do that at this point. Go and get some colonic irrigation.
Oh, wow.
And wash it out quicker. So I found a lady who performed that and went to see her.
Job or 12, eh?
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Out of all the people on earth, it ended up being this lady, and she gave me the procedure and then said, have you ever tried bioresonance? I went, what's that? Never heard of it.
Yeah.
She said, look, here's somebody, a practitioner of this. She says, I think this will help. Go and see him. Now, didn't know what this stuff was. Went to go and see this guy and said, I've been sent here by this lady. She says you can help. Now, a few weeks before this, I'd ended up on the floor screaming in agony because I couldn't wee.
Okay.
And Norman had to whip me down to A&E, and they said, looks like you might have a prostate issue here. And they performed a horrible procedure to enable me to wee, which involved a catheter. And
brutal.
And said, right, we're going to line you up for some biopsies, which they did. And in the meantime, I found this bioresonance practitioner and said, look, this is what's happened with my prostate. I've got a bad back, I've got a slip disc, sciatica, arthritis, taken antidepressants and so on, and this is what's occurred. And he said, okay, I can help with some of that. So with regard to priority, he said, let's start with the prostate because you're going in for biopsies. And he got this metal grid out, made me sit on that, and he plugged this thing into a device.
Yeah.
And he said, right, sit there, and he programmed in certain frequencies and said, right, just stay there for an hour. And I did that about 3 times over the next couple of weeks. I went for the first biopsy.
Yeah.
And the consultant said, well, I don't know what's happening, but it seems to possibly be sorting itself out. Go away and come back and have another biopsy in a few weeks. So I mean, a biopsy is a horrible procedure as well. They go sort of up inside you and snip bits. And the second time, I really didn't want to go. And I said to them, look, you're going to have to put me out because I don't want that. I don't want to be awake while that's happening.
Yeah.
But I had that done. And afterwards, the consultant said, got the results. He said, well, here's the good news. You haven't got cancer. And I'm discharging you back to your GP. I went, wow.
Wow, yeah.
That's a result. I went back to the bioresonance guy and said, now can you sort out my arthritis, slip disc, and everything else? He said, yep, think so. Put these pads on me, plugged the device in, put these frequencies at a particular level, and within about 5 or 6 visits, lost all the pain, didn't need the pills, dropped 2 stone in weight, back down the gym, and I said, why don't people know about this? It's fantastic. Yeah. And I said, look, we had moved up here to invest in property. I'm not interested. Just get me this device and teach me how to use it. Yeah. And that's the start of it.
I mean, you know, what we're looking at here is, I don't want to call it a hero's journey. I want to call it an enlightening journey. going through all you went through, having the endurance, the physical endurance to be able to absorb that many drugs over the years, prescribed and unprescribed, in itself is an art. Maintaining your sanity to get to a place where you can experience now these healing processes in a way that you have the intelligence left in you to make it into a business the way you have here. That, is such an applause in itself, a life applause in itself. Your cap and gown, in your life university, you've got it. It's surreal. And let's think about this. Let's think about the conclusion here and inner growth tools we talk about. The drugs and alcohol, they don't own me. You let go of mom and dad now. Your emotional stamina is maturing, but it's no sabotage. It's now a life growth. Severe adaptability is now stabilizing and finding shape. You've got it nailed. Now that adaptability is, as you've taken your ability to adapt to extreme circumstances to creating extreme changes. And then, of course, we got increase the intensity of his pain is love. This is still king. I've got here that you're understanding people's pain and how to turn that back into love now. Where you took love and made it, and that came from pain, you're now taking people's pain and make them back in love. I'm seeing this transition through your 3D process. It's just beautiful, how you took those years of, and I still feel you're underplaying the journey. I still feel, look at this, I still feel you're underplaying the journey. To have experienced that amount of prescribed drugs and everything else that come in, your liver, how it's stayed loyal, I'll never know, but it has. Your kidneys, how they stayed loyal, you'll never know, but you had to carry an illness that allowed you to go to a person to experience that level of healing to be where we are right now.
I think that's absolutely right. And also I have to give credence and thanks to some people who run a public speaking course, which I went on. At first it was for a discovery day, then it was 5 days on this course, and then it was sort of a year's course afterwards on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
And what one of the trainers said there to me is, your message is in your mess.
Wow.
Now, I'd hidden my background, hospital and drugs and all that. And she said, if you can save just one person or help one person and show them that they don't have to go to the extent that you did, then it's job done. Now, stop hiding it and tell people.
Wow. And that is a big thing, because let's remember, you weren't allowed to speak. You weren't allowed to voice. You were only allowed to reply to demands of mom and dad. And if them demands weren't replied in a way that negotiated their ego, then you were beaten for that. How do you get from that to becoming a successful business entrepreneur who you are? And your business is called Total Body Health. Not broken mind and heart, or busted up, or feel sorry for myself. Pity party healing is called Total Body Health. That, to me, is pure evolvement. Pure evolvement. You must be an old soul that has come this time to say, listen, bring it on. Bring it on. Because well done to you, my friend. I'm in awe. And there we are for this episode. It's like, let's, in our next episode, let's go into how you take the benefit of who you are in life, because not many people see this. Not many people see the true worth of their experiences. They're just loyal to the hurt and disappointment of those experiences. At what point did you feel, Tony, that it was no longer a pity party? It was an opportunity.
I think what happened was, on this speaking course, people were various business owners. I didn't have a business. And I was told, you've got to get up and talk about your business, and I haven't got a business. And they said, okay, what are you interested in? I said, well, I've got this device I'm learning how to use, which has helped my health and so on. So talk about that then. So I talked about that. And then I started to think about that more and more. And I thought, maybe this is something that will help other people. Then during COVID, it's been 2020, I was in the shower one day, just thinking about...
As we do.
And I thought, COVID, what's wrong with it? People can't breathe. It's something to do with the respiratory system. They need oxygen. Of course they do. Got out of the shower, sourced, where can I get an oxygen chamber?
And here it is. It's sitting in one of your rooms here. It's amazing. And we will get those images out there.
It was total madness. And then found out where that was. Went down, tried it out, said, okay, I have one of them. And I saw this other thing that looked like a sunbed. I said, what's that? He said, it's red light therapy. Well, how does that work? And he explained. I said, I have one of them as well. And now Anoma is looking at me going, I'm going to kill you. Where are you going to put these, you idiot? Oh, I'll find somewhere. And so it grew from that, and then got another bioresonance device, which you've seen there. And that's how it took off. Now, the other weird thing as to how we ended up in Wimbledon.
Well, hold that thought, because we're going to come into that in a sec, because here's the thing. I don't want us to get overdosed here, so we're gonna come into this in our next episode, where the final episode is Journey into Tony's Birth of Success. That's where we go in next. I'm going to dive into this whole exchange of passport from one journey of life country to another journey of life country, and that's what we're going to be touching into next. So catch up with us. Watch out for the next episode. It's going to be here, and happy days, mate. And thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll be back.